Thank you so much for having me. I'm extremely excited to talk to the community. I have some slides, but I wanted to make sure you could actually see I was a real person before I hop into that. So,
Yeah.
without further ado, let's open up this screen share. What are we going to do? Most importantly, I promise you it's going to be no longer than 15 minutes. If I hit 14 minutes and 37 seconds, that's exactly where we should be. So, Thomas, hold me to that. But we're going to talk about sort of what is freelance, why would someone freelance, and what does this actually mean? And so I'm going to throw this graphic at you, by the way. This is kind of like if we had a big test and I gave you the answer beforehand. But at the end of this presentation, I think the big sort of hurrah is thinking about yourself and all of us as sort of products in Amazon. So here's a little carrot, here's a little treat, stick it in the back of your head and forget about it. So, what is freelance? Well, let me start by saying what freelance is not. I think the common misconception that I receive on a daily basis when I would tell people, hey, I'm a freelancer, hey, I lead freelancers, is it's always, oh, that's cool. You're an Uber driver. And I would say, no, not quite. And they would say, oh, you're a blogger, right? You're like that Tim Ferriss 4 hour work week in a beach in Bali. And I'd say again, no, that's actually not the case either. I'm more like the person in the picture where I got to wear a suit or I got to wear a tie or I have to wear this ridiculous button down that I'm wearing right now. Because really, you can't differentiate me from a full time employee and you name it. And so, with that lens of what freelance is not, what is freelance? I think the simplest way to understand it is it's project based work. There's always been freelancers. The term actually goes back to medieval times when it was the freelancers that were sort of the mercenaries. Now, we've evolved from then, right? We wear suits instead of whatever contraptions they wore then. But there's still that principle of freelancers are project-based work. And so a lot of times we call it the gig economy. That always gives connotations of, oh, you're part of a band, right? Because bands play gigs or comedians or you name it. Another analogy is sort of this Hollywood model where they all make a movie and they all sort of set up shop and then leave for the next movie and then hop to the next and hop to the next. What it really is, what all those things are technically freelance, it's really the digitization of project-based work. So with that lens, and there's also platforms like Upwork and Fiverr and TopTal and Freelancer and all these, but like I said, project-based work. So why in the world would someone freelance? Why would they say, hey, and by the way, freelance is not this binary, you're a freelancer or you're nothing. I myself am a full-time employee. I still take on side projects. At heart, I'm always a freelancer, although I sort of am a full-time employee in current stance. You can either be just a freelancer, you can either be a full-time employee that freelances, you can be a sort of part-time employee that also freelances, or you can be just a full-time employee that leverages freelancers in their workflow. But so why would someone freelance? Let me sort of tell you about my journey. For me, I started freelancing back in college. It was the extension of the question, how can I help? I don't know why, but I got really good at asking people that had money, how can I help them? And as we all know, everyone has something they need help with. And so usually it would be, oh, you tell me how you can help. And I'd say, oh, well, I'm a student. I can do research for you. I can put together financial models. Pretty much anything I could Google search or YouTube and teach myself turned into my product offering. And so I did that through all of college and I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite projects to date was I created at first the research and then the business plan for a manufacturing private equity firm that vertically integrated sort of this really, really small scale manufacturing. And so I did everything from the research to figure out, okay, what are your competitive advantages? Are the insights that you're talking about real? And then naturally it turned into, oh, you should actually go build the business plan. And so the reason that's my favorite project, you'll hear me talk a lot about sort of meaning, which is this very fluffy thing, and purpose and all that, fluffy stuff. But that project, the result was we saved 75 manufacturing jobs by saving companies that would not have existed if it weren't for the vertical integration. That was powerful to me. That was whoa. Not only do I love the way I work, because by the way, this is working sort of where you want, when you want, on what you want, But the work I was doing now, I could directly see the result and the purpose and all that sort of fluffy stuff. Now, I didn't go just freelance. I sort of believed that I was supposed to also have a job, right? Because when we grow up, no one ever says, or no one that I know, their parents say, hey, you should go freelance. You should go not have a job, right? That's called unemployed, especially with parents in my community. And so I did try to stay on that straight and narrow. When I was in college, magna cum laude and honor rolls and all that stuff because I had to get into the big four. I was an accounting and finance major. And so I ended up sort of realizing that, and I was interning and got the full-time offer at a big four. But what I realized when I was there is work, it kind of stunk. And so what I mean by that is, to me, freelance was normal. What wasn't normal was this thing that people called work. And so at first I thought I was crazy, but then, as I started looking into stats and what we all know right now, it wasn't too crazy. And here's sort of going to be three stats that are examples of that. So, almost half of students are going to graduate underemployed in the US, meaning the degree they got, they're not working in that job. So kind of a waste of time, right? You close your eyes, you throw a dart for 4 years, you throw a bunch of money at it and you hope it pays off. And for 40, almost half of students, that's not true. So work wasn't really working too well for them. 30% of the workforce here will switch jobs every 12 months. Well, that doesn't seem too positive and fun. And then lastly, there's no secret, and this number I think is actually conservative. I've seen a lot worse numbers, but only 32% of workers say they're engaged. And so to me, that just this thing of cold work just doesn't make sense. And when I freelanced, I loved it. And so I've been chasing this sort of freelance problem my whole life. And that's sort of, why I'm here at Microsoft. That's the longer story. But why does someone freelance? Well, because work under one constraint doesn't really make too much sense. So freelance is simply project-based work. When you talk about a freelance platform, the digitization of project-based work, why would someone freelance? Well, to me, it made sense. You hear a bunch of things like flexibility. They want to work when they want, where they want, when they want, and what they want. That's all cool, but I hope that story to you kind of sticks for me of why I cared about freelance and why I love it so much. So what does this mean for you? Well, we come back to this because when you are a freelancer, you've basically said, hey, internet, I'm going to give you sort of my profile and you're going to make me public. And everything I do from here on out can be tracked through ratings and reviews, no different than a product in Amazon. And so for me, there's a couple things that go into this, right? It's having a portfolio, it's being reviewed. If you look at your LinkedIn, although it's not as explicit at this, it's pretty close in terms of being able to decipher, oh, what's this person all about? And so for me, my other option was becoming a product in Amazon. And so that's sort of the glue is now, all right, freelancing, this is why someone would do it. This is what it is. What does it mean for you? Well, it does sort of turn you into a product in Amazon. And so that was my other option. And now, when I tell you that, it's pretty crazy, right? Especially for someone that's been in the workforce for 20, 30 years. It sounds pretty nuts, but I can promise you in these next slides, hopefully we'll show you, it's not as crazy as it seems. Well, number one, if you all are aware of China's social credit system, the number one thing I get is generally, oh, Matt, that's that Black Mirror episode. Yeah, it is. And China's social credit system, if you guys are familiar, I'm pretty sure it's rolled out significantly currently, and it's planning to be rolled out officially. When we think about this, it really is just taking a normal credit score and applying the social aspect to it. But so that's one proof point. But here in the US, you don't really have to go to China to understand that this social credit system is already in place. Now, number one, if anyone went to college in the past 5 to 10 years, you'd realize the only way to pass is by using this site called ratemyprofessor.com. Well, I don't think most professors know about it, to be honest, or knew, but it gives them their exact score. It gives them the difficulty level. It gives them the sort of reviews of is this a class I will enjoy? It even gives a hotness score. But so that's if you're a professor. If you're a student, and we've been ranked our whole lives. We wake up And we've been told by society or school or whatever it is, we've been graded, whether it's an A, B, C, D. And then I can vividly remember in middle school, we were even ranked on behavior. And so, did they show up on time? Were they attentive in class? Were they noisy? Were they ruly? Were they working well with other students? And so, this idea of being ranked, it's really not that different. Third is a company feedback system. Most likely, every single company has a feedback system, and they're using that, and we can call it a connect or whatever it is. They're using that to understand, are you a good worker? And so you already have it. The difference is it's not public and in the open. Lastly, and this is where I'm going to purposefully, intentionally kind of cover myself because this can go down a huge rabbit hole. But if we think about Google and Facebook and all these things, most of them understand us better than we understand ourselves. And so I'm going to drop it at there so we don't go to that giant rabbit hole. But the main thing and sort of touching point is, what if we all become a product in Amazon? Now, what I'm going to tell you is that it is here today, right? And it's not doom and gloom. I can promise you that. You're going to see that in the next slides. But there's this quote that I absolutely love. It's, the future is here. It just isn't evenly distributed, because the people that I know that are embracing this are the early adopters that are seizing massive, massive, massive results from the opportunity. So let me just give you three examples for me. Now, I work very closely with about 5 to 15 freelancers at a time. I absolutely love my freelancers, and they're all shapes and sizes, meaning some are full-time employees, some are just freelancers. These 3 are geared at a student audience. And the reason that these 3 are brought up is because one student used it to get his full-time job. One student used it to love her full-time job. And then one student just went out and said, I'm just going to be a full-time freelancer who was a designer. And so the student that used it for opportunity didn't have too good of opportunities coming out of college. He couldn't really get the internship. He couldn't prove his value. But by using freelance projects or micro internships from the platform Parker Dewey, he was able to share that, hey, I have the attitude, I have the drive, you can trust me. And now he's swimming in job opportunities. The next one, Lauren, she wasn't a full-time job, but she needed to have the freedom and flexibility, because when she freelanced, she knew the kind of worker she was and what she needed to excel. And so she was able to say, hey, company, I've been a freelancer. I love this type of work. I am the best at this type of work. And so they can mold her full-time role for that. And the third, Emerson, is a phenomenal case. He was working in design agencies, and now he's totally on his own. So I showed you 3. Every single company, whatever, can show their case studies, and that's great. But I promise you, it's not just them. It's not just the crazy freelancers. There's some numbers out there. About half of the workforce will be freelancing in the next 10 years. 47, here's some of the big one, is millennials, like I mentioned with our grades. This is normal for us, right? We're used to working in this type of environment. And so 47% are already freelancing, and around 70, above 70, are interested in it. And then sort of with the company lens is 47% of hiring managers at enterprises are utilizing freelancers. And I can tell you it's much higher in terms of who are interested in trying to get the ball rolling. So in summary, and I promised you it's going to be under 15 minutes, and I purposefully left a bunch of time for Q&As. I do have a roadmap of how you can profit off this and how you can start today. But I just want you to remember, this future is here today. And the people that I showed you and the people that are currently freelancing, meaning they are freelancers or they're leveraging into their workflows, they're reaping massive, massive reward. So we finished with the question. How will you become your best product? Thank you. Let's open it up for Q&A. And I will come back to the screen so you can see me.
Hey, thanks. That was quite 15 minutes. No, more or less. Perfect. Yeah, we have some interesting comments and questions like welcome. So yeah, for example, and I will show it here on the stream, the question. For example, Raymond, he says, like, sounds all good, but how to explain it to my boss or doing it during my free time? I'm thinking, Raymond, you're referring to freelance. So is this something everyone should do? Because I understood freelance is not as part of the employment, correct?
So Large question. I'm not going to answer based off your company's moonlighting policy because that will not open up that can of worms. You should go straight to HR, legal, and ask them about it. What I will say is most companies are sort of adopting like classic Google 10, meaning 10% of your time you should be working on things.
Yes.
Now, freelancing is just saying you're on a platform like Upwork, you're doing others. I can, say that I've seen millions of freelancers that have a full-time job and doing it on the side. Don't want to speak on your company's behalf, so definitely don't want to open this can of worms. Another option though is also to start using platforms like Upwork to add expertise onto what you're currently doing. So for example, say you're building a white paper and you are the best writer in the world. Well, you probably shouldn't be doing design. And so how can you use Upwork to bring some designers in? Likewise, you're the designer. You might not be the best at content in the world. How do you bring in some content people to now help your PowerPoints, you name it? And so that's how I'd say the lens to look at it is, yes, you can start freelancing today by taking on little projects. How to do that? It's number one, scope out your skills. So understand what tangible skills do you have? Are you a graphic designer? Get even deeper. Are you a PowerPoint designer? Are you an infographic designer? If yes, get on these platforms and start seeing projects that fit that criteria. Other side of the token, you're on a project. How can you take skills that you aren't? And there's numerous ways to attack this, by the way. Some people love being project managers and they want to outsource their life. Some people, myself included, love creating. And so when I think freelancer, I think, whoa, I have access to millions of experts that I wouldn't be able to hire full time with my personal bankroll, but now I can pay them on a per project basis. Best
True.
example is I was working on an article or a report, and it was on the automation component. I'm not an engineer. I can read every single book in the world. I can read Second Machine Age. I can read all of Kurzweil, and I can nail that. But it'd be much sort of good quality control or even in the early process to get someone who's the CTO of a large company who handles all of the automation to take a look at it and say, hey, Matt, this point is really bad. This point is really good. You name it. So that's how I would start thinking of the lens of, oh, wow, I don't want to get in trouble with my company. How do I even start? Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I believe I just to the flip to the next one because Becca, she is writing. Now I'm 55. Is it not too late to start this? And I think you already answered this. It's not the question of age, but more a question of like your expertise, no?
Let me give you my favorite case study for that. She was not included in the deck, although she should have been. But my main editor is a woman named Samantha. She's based out of the Midwest. She is incredible. I don't know her age, to be honest. I know she's seasoned, I think would be the best word to use. She's probably upper 50s, maybe in her 60s. But she was a small company, small public company CEO. And then when she wanted to raise her kids, she had to jump out. And so when she came back, I think it was like 18 or 20 years later, the recruiters all told her, hey, you're never going to be able to be where you were before. And so she said, oh, wow, that stinks. But I really don't want to be a CEO. I'd much rather just be an editor. I love the written word. I love language. I'm always reading about it. And so now she's on Upwork and making, in her words, making a much better living than she did when she was a small company CEO. And so, yeah, it's absolutely not too late. No way. Age is definitely not a factor. It's more about your scope skill set.
Perfect. So you see, we are already running out of time. Very quick, very inspiring. Matt, was great pleasure. And yeah, by the way, all our participants, like the ones who use the chat, by the way, this is something as well, like new work or future of work. You should interact more. But yeah, more than happy to follow up if you would like with Matt. Thanks for this first session on our new work, bottish edition. And wishing you great luck. And yeah, talk to you soon again. And thanks for tuning in, the participants. And so see you on the next session.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. We do that. Thanks.